Well, good afternoon, and as I promised, we got caught up and got all the dragonflies done. They're all shipped out, and I've shown this drawing here before, but we'll start at the beginning, because this is, I promised everyone that's interested in lead work that we would do a tutorial on this small piece, and I'm glad it's small because this allows me to confine all this instruction down into something relatively simple to understand. Well, the first thing that I do with these, of course, is draw a good drawing. And in that drawing, I cannot tell you or emphasize enough how important it is to get this drawing square, for these lines and everything to line up properly, for the vertical lines to be vertical and the horizontal lines to be horizontal. That's very important. And then you want the drawing square. Now, if you'll look, we can see the actual glass cut line, which is this line here, and all these lines are glass cut lines, and they go inside of this wooden frame that I have here. And we'll throw this up here for fun. Okay, so we've taken great pains to square this thing up and make sure that square fits inside our screwed down wood here. And I'll mention again for people that are doing this, I have these plywood, oh heck, what do I call it? They call this OSB, oriented strand board. Anyway, it's a cheap plywood. It's not even plywood, but it's just chips of wood that are all glued together and formed into a half-inch board in this case. And these are just little strips of hardwood that I've used and done a lot of glass work with these. I just screw those down and they form the square that this stuff is going to be built in. And so if you look at this offset here, there's an offset from the actual cut line of the window. And what I mean by cut line is the line at which the glass is going to be cut on to the outside. And that's because on this particular piece, we're going to use zinc. Now, I have used a lot of copper lately. Here's copper. Same shape, same design, half-inch U channel. I don't put copper on these because this is going to be lead. Everything is going to be patinaed dark. And so I think it maybe look a little bit odd for all of that lead to be dark gray near black and then come up on the copper on the outside. I think that's unnecessary attention to. I just don't think it looks good. So anyway, we went with the zinc. All right. Now, I've cut and fit these two and miter that corner. And they're going to fit, let's get another piece here. Here's just a little cut-off piece right here. And we're going to go right up here and look at what I'm doing there. You can see where the glass is going to fit in this groove on this half-inch U-channel zinc. And we come on down. We're expecting it to fit something about like that. Okay, so we only need to do two sides here because I'm going to build this thing across here and up this side. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to come and put this in and all across here first. And then we're going to build up this direction. And then we'll put a piece of lead across here, all the way across. And we'll build to right in, you can see where I'm at. So we'll have all this in, right? And then we're going to put all this glass in right here. And this makes working this thing, which is going to be a hassle, this thing pretty simple because we're working down into top of this glass that's already here. If we went across this way, that gets real, I shouldn't say real difficult, much more difficult to come across here and set this up and then start bringing these into it. And it doesn't take you much to get off over here. So we're not going to get off because we know what we're doing. So anyway, I'll have all of this in, and that's more like a pedestal or a platform to do this more difficult work. And I'll have this all fastened down. And this stuff, there's a lot of pushing, pulling, jamming, pushing to get these pieces to fit into the lead right. I'll show you how we cut the lead and do all that stuff. All right, so, I didn't talk about the benefit of this being on this particular piece of wood. I've got these pieces of wood every size you can imagine. The largest window that I've done on this table Oh, gee, I've done them 8 feet long. I have a piece of plywood that's 8 feet by 30-something inches, and I've built windows on that thing. But the reason that you want to do this is because it makes it so much easier, and I'll tell you why. If you're just on the table, say here's the edge of the tabletop, and you fasten this drawing down, and you're going to build this window right on top of the table, which is what I did for many years until I figured this out. I would build it right here. Well, now, I'm 6 feet tall, but I've got to lean way over to work up in here. This part of this thing could take 2 or 3 days or so. So if you're leaning over the top of this thing, trying to look down on your cartoon and get this done, that's hard on your back. So, and I'm an old man, so, you know, I don't want to push myself any more than I have to do. So all we do here, I can turn this thing around and work this section. If I wanted to, I could come back over here, lean this thing off the table, and I can put a couple of clamps right here and clamp this thing down and get it clear out here if I want to and work on it, so I can look straight down on it and work on it. And then I get over on this side and do this side. So putting these things on a piece of wood makes them a lot easier. If they're portable and you can move them around, it's just so much easier on your back. So I would work on this section and then turn it around and come up and work on this section. And when you're working with lead, it's nice to be able to pull everything back towards you. And we'll do some actual video of doing the lead work. Right now we're doing all this preliminary stuff. It takes me about a day to set a job up like this and get it all the way I want it. Now, on most all of my copper foil work, I don't put these border strips in first. And in fact, if this was going to be copper foil, this board here, and this strip or board here, would be on the cut line, because I would do all of the cutting and all of the setting of the glass and the soldering without this border. And the reason that I do that is because obviously the glass laying flat, here's a piece of glass, excuse me. Okay. That glass is laying flat, so when you're building a copper foil window, all of the glass that you're working on is laying flat on the table. If you have your border already in, I'm going to hold this phone up. Okay, now, come on, Genius, I may not get that in there. Just a minute. I didn't open this. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll open that up. I'm doing this. I should set this phone. Let me do this. Let me get this phone. I should have done this, but I didn't anticipate getting all that wild and crazy with this. Here we go. Okay. Now I'm going to back you all up here. Turn this around where I can see it. Okay, we're going to take this fid, homemade fid. We're going to go down in this zinc. I should have done this anyway. And run that through there. Just open that up a little bit. I'm trying to make a point, and this glass is a little bit thick here, but I'm trying to make a point with this. There we go. Okay, now, we'll take the phone back now. See how we've got this glass, and so if you were making all these pieces of glass on a copper foil window and you put this border in, then this part of the glass is flat here, but you're kicking up and going into here. Well, when I'm doing a copper foil window, I'm trying to get that out of there now. When I'm doing a copper foil window, that makes these pieces here come up at an angle into that zinc. And so I'm kind of a perfectionist about this stuff. I don't want that angle and then the rest of this piece going down. Because when you solder, your finished solder with this on this side, you've got this border in and you're in copper foil, then you've permanently made that angle there. Now it's very slight, but it's still a slight indentation. I don't want that. So if this was a copper foil window, we would not have this in. Then, if it were copper foil, I do the whole piece, solder it all up. Okay, now you've got that copper foil bead, right, on the whole top of this. When you flip this panel over, then it's already setting up on that bead, and it will intersect the groove here in this zinc came perfectly. So there's no angle. So anyway, that's just my way of thinking about it. Okay, now what do we want to talk about? Oh yeah, so let's put this back in. Set this here, put this back in. And the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you. Oh, now here's the piece we're working on. There it is. And so my client wants to stay more or less in this zone with this thing, the coloring on this. You know, I mean, I've got some artistic license because this window's 100 years old, most likely. It's very old. And I'm not going to match that exactly, nor do I have to. I need to be in the ballpark with that. And he's approved a couple of pieces of glass that I have that are going to work this out. And then I'm trying to work out the rest of the colors here. But here's where I think I'm at. I'm going to come right here and start working off this side right here. And that is going to be right here. And then this strip here, which is that amber strip, I found this piece right there. I like that. So what's that look like next to this? That looks pretty cool. That's a nice transition. And so I'll start this thing coming across here with more green here, and then there's more of the kind of a off-white here, light tan, ivory, up in the top of this thing. And we're going to see if we can work that when we get up into here, that up in behind here. So the idea is for the greener glass to be in this area here on the sides and around the edge, and then try to work as best we can the lighter stuff in behind this. And say, well, what's this going to be? Well, I'm thinking I got a couple of ways to go here, and I don't quite have that figured out. The greens in these leaves here, these look pretty close there, but I really kind of want to bail out of that just a little bit, but work something that's compatible to this background. Okay, and we're going to talk about this real kind of a whitish look here. Looks like they're a little bit pale in that green right here and more white there. And then as they leave from the floral part of this piece, headed out this direction, they're working some browns in there, which takes me to right here. So I've got enough of that. There's my leaves right here. Here, a little bit of this work all along here and along here. So that's going to work out for me there. And then when I get to that, let's come back over here. When I get to this floral piece here, or this tulip or whatever that is, I'm thinking that I'm going to come over here and get right in this real soft white with a just pale green. And I'm thinking this pale green right on the outside of that tulip. And then the tulip, we'll just call it a tulip. The tulip here, oh, somewhere right in here, right in here, right in there. I'm kind of looking around. You know, this has got some potential right down here. I like the way that looks. So I'll find a section in this piece of glass that's going to be my flower. Here's my leaves headed to the flower. Maybe a little bit of this soft green right alongside the flower. And then the field, let's go back over here. The field behind those leaves, this area, the rest of the piece here, I think I got it figured out. I have this one here as kind of a, I'll think about it. I'm not sure what this actually looks like in the light. Whoa, man, I'm telling you what now, there might be some flowers right there. Not flowers, but the leaves right here. That's a little bit heavy duty right there. But anyway, I'm in the ballpark with this thing. I've got this figured out. This is, I went to Yakagini. There's some Ouroboros here. I think that's Ouroboros right there. I don't even know who this is. This might be Armstrong. I'm not sure about that. Oh, and then our little dots, the little squares, Maybe nobody's noticed that. Right there. So I thought with that amber right here, I thought I'd put a little bit of life in that. See, there's a little bit of variegation, a little bit of movement right there. There's only 4 of these little squares. You know, this is a strong piece of glass, but we don't have very much of it in there. So that's where we're at. We're kind of just trying to figure this thing out. You know, I'm really comfortable with that for the leaves, and I'm really comfortable for this with the background behind the flower, and I'm real comfortable with that as the flower. I like that. And so usually it takes me, I think, I spent about maybe well, I thought about this for quite a little while, this particular piece. And the rest of this came together pretty quick today. I more or less figured out what I wanted to do here. So, now the next thing. We're going to use 3/16 lead on this, which is, I would say, plenty difficult. And it'll be a good thing for you guys to see that. And I get all kinds of questions, so I'm going to cover every little part of this. This is a lead stretcher right there. And what you do, I've got a shorter piece of lead. This is 3/16 lead. I figure it'll take about 3 or 4 pieces here. If I need another one, I got a whole box of this stuff. And you take this lead and you open this up. I'm going to try to do this one-handed. Well, hell, let me put this down just a second. Okay, I shove that lead under this teeth of this thing, right? Okay, and then you come down here and you can see where it's been indented a little bit there. But you take a pair of pliers. They're over there. Anyway, grozing pliers. Anybody that's doing this kind of work knows what grozing pliers are. And you don't want to stretch this. It's not about really stretching it is, as, you know what, I need to straighten that one. It's about straightening it. And you're not going to get it stretched very much. You don't really want to stretch it much. Maybe just a little bit. So let's make sure we've got enough of this under there. If you don't get enough of that under there and you go down here and start pulling this thing and that lets loose, you're going to go flying right across the room. All right, so what I'm going to do, there's a couple of little ripples in this lead right here. So when I give this a little pull, just gentle, right there, that just takes the ripples right out of it. Okay, then lift it up, one-handed. It's easier to do this with 2 hands. Let me set this down. There we go, and you can see where the teeth have grabbed hold of that. So this thing here is super. And I've just got it on my workbench locked down. There's a hole in the back of it. Some people screw this down to their bench and just leave it permanently. I use this bench for woodworking and stuff like that. This thing weighs 750 pounds. Anyway, so I just throw it up here and put a clamp on it. When I'm done with this job, we'll pull that up and, you know, save it for the next job. So we've got 4 pieces of lead here. I generally cut them in half and move them over to the table. And one thing that makes this, I'm looking for my little, I'm always looking for something to measure with. There it is. I lose this. I bought 2 of these because I can't seem to keep up with one of them. Okay, here's my little millimeter. I use this thing, and particularly on glass like this. And so we're going for 25 millimeters here in this piece of glass. And this is another place where you come back and you make sure you got your lines right. All right. And I know that I can strip off this glass right here. I'll cut a strip off this thing. And what time is it here? 3 o'clock. I'll show you how to do this. I'll do some glass stripping tomorrow. I'll cut this thing, maybe this one. Cut some of that and show you how we make the strips. But anyway, this is easy because I just get off of that 3/8 or 5/16, 13/16, whatever. You know, all this decimal stuff, whatever we call our measuring system. And I just use millimeters because it's so accurate. And I think these are 15 millimeters. Yeah. So I can make all these 25s and then these 15s. and then the 25s will fit in here. And, oh, and I should mention, there's going to be all this consternation among some people about, well, you need pattern shears. And pattern shears, I've got them in a cabinet over there. But if I made a pattern of this thing, which I won't make, but if some pieces I will. But if I made a pattern of this thing, and I'm going to cut these one at a time. If I made a pattern of this thing, then I would, what normally happens is that here's the original, and then people make an entire pattern of this thing, and then they cut out all of the glass and then put it together. Well, I mean, you know, everybody can't be wrong, but that doesn't work for me because when I build these pieces one at a time, I'm going to be on that line. Well, I don't have to worry about pattern shears, or what they're really trying to be concerned about is that piece of the lead right in the center. This is shaped like an H, right? Okay, they're trying to compensate for that piece of the lead that's in the center here. So when I put that 25 in here, in this piece in there, I'll probably, when I start stripping this off, strip it off just under 25. And then when I put this in, then when I measure to where I want the next piece to go, this piece, it might end up being 14 millimeters. Okay, so that 14 millimeter piece goes in. By the time you add this piece in, you've already added that 1 millimeter back, and you're back to your original line. As I build this thing, you'll see what I'm talking about. And let me point out something else here. This is 3/16 lead right here. And what makes a leaded window, leaded panel more difficult, if you're in 3/16 lead, the next size up is quarter. So, boy, there's a huge difference between 3/16 lead and quarter, and it's certainly more than a 1/16 of an inch. It is in the size, but it's not in accuracy of cutting. So let's look at this. Okay, this is the edge underneath. That's 1.5 millimeters. Nearly 2. So you've got to be a good cutter, an accurate cutter, because when you're laying this lead in, you can't have gaps and stuff, and your glass can't do any of this weaving around because you only have, and look at this thing. Let me get something to mark with here. Get this down where you can see it. Right there, the tip of this instrument right here, that's all you have to hide the edge of your glass underneath the face, and that's what we call the, let me put this right here. This top part is rounded, and this is called rounded crown 3/16 lead cane. This little line running up the center here is the heart. So there's a lot of consternation people have about how much space this heart is going to take up. Well, when I put this 24.5 millimeter strip of glass in here, I've already immediately compensated for that heart. When I stick the next piece of glass in, I usually just put the whole strip of the glass in there, mark where I want it to be, take a look at that distance. Is it all about 14.5 millimeters to get across here? Then if that's what it is, I'll strip that glass off 14.5, and I'll be, when I get done putting that piece of glass in, that heart sits just in the right spot, and the next piece of glass will go in right there. So you'll see as I do this particular leaded piece how accurate you can be by just going one piece at a time. And that's how, even on a small piece like this, that's how I keep these lines dead straight. If I come in and make a pattern of this whole thing, cut all those pieces out, all that glass out, and then set them over here, and then start trying to put this thing together, boy, you're too narrow, you're too wide. You're grinding and grinding and grinding and trying to get it to fit. And now that, you can get away with a lot if you're working with, maybe I have a piece of 1/4 inch, probably don't. I was looking to see if I had a piece of 1/4 inch lead. I've got some in a cabinet over there, not handy. Anyway, if you've got 1/4 inch wide lead, you've got all kinds of room to have miscut glass underneath here. But if you're working with 3/16, I've shown you, you've got less than 2 millimeters. At best, 2 millimeters. I'm looking at 1, 2. The absolute most you can possibly have is 2 millimeters. Well, let's go back again and look at that. 2 millimeters is down to nothing. And when you start working in stuff like this, where these points are coming together, the accuracy of your glass cutting is super important, because how much of your miscutting do you think that you can add under lead that's making all these intersections? And look at this. So you just can't be off. So that's why you'll see it. My 1 piece at a time method allows, for instance, this piece to be slightly off, because we'll fix it when we come back and set this one in. If this one's off a little bit, we'll compensate for how much it's off with this piece. Now, it won't be off enough for it to be visible, but if you start having mistakes in your glass cutting and you're going, well, it's close enough, and you start working that lead in and soldering, trying to get out of that, those mistakes compound themselves. So we're going to start right off the bat here. This glass coming down this line right here and across here, I can guarantee it's going to fit right along that line, because I'm going to do a strip at a time, and I'll work each piece to get it to fit that cartoon. Then I'll come over and work this line, and I'll work each one of those pieces to get it to fit that cartoon. If I continue to do that, these lines are straight right now. The only way that these lines will get off is if I do something wrong with the cut on the glass. Well, I'm not going to do that, because I'm going to cut this piece of glass once to fit that spot. Then I'm going to come in here and set another piece of glass in there, look at it, trace around it, and we'll be making patterns for these, by the way. One piece, you'll see that too, one pattern at a time, because I can't see through this. Now, if this was glue chip, Baroque, any of the clear glasses, I just set the glass in there and look around, look down through it. But this time we're going to have to make pattern, a simple paper pattern, and that paper pattern will be I'll make one paper pattern at a time. So you'll see that. This is a foolproof method of making this thing fit right. And when it's finished, the left side, the right side, all of this stuff will line up dead on, because I'm working one piece at a time. I don't have them all cut out, and then they start to get off, and then I'm fighting that. They're too narrow. Well, what do you do if you've cut all of this glass, you're putting it together, and you get right here, and this piece doesn't fit? It's too narrow. Well, what do you do now? Well, you're going to have to go make another piece of glass. And got some stuff going on right here. So anyway, there's that. So I'm going to probably pull a pin on this thing today. I've done a lot of work here today to get the preliminary stuff out of the way. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to cut some of this stuff. Probably the fun cuttings up here. But this stuff right here is no big deal. And we'll start laying these things in here, and I'll show you how you keep this stuff straight. So for those that are in there, there's a thing they have on, if you make these videos, tutorial videos, there's a thing that I'm the only person that sees it, but it's a thing called retention curve. How many people started out looking at this video, and then how many continued to look at it? And sometimes these things look like they went right off a cliff. Well, this isn't for everybody. The very few people, other than people that want to do this kind of work, that either aren't proficient at it, or trying to learn, or somewhat proficient, and they're looking for maybe a little upgrade. Those are the only people that are going to be interested in this. And if there was only one person, that'd be fine with me. I'm cool with it. I know how to do this already. I'm just trying to help other people. Okay, folks, I appreciate it. If you have questions, be sure and ask me, because I'll make note of the questions. And then when we come back on the next video, I'll cover those. But this thing's going to rock and roll here, because once I get started man, I can fly across one of these, particularly when it's this easy. There's not that much serious work here. Till we get to here, then it'll slow down. And the only reason this slows down is because it's at 3/16 lead, which you really got to play with it to get some of this stuff going on. And I'll show you the cutting techniques for the lead and my new, oh, where is that thing? We cut lead 3 different ways. Here we go. This was about my first 35 years. They call it a Don Carlos knife or a lead knife. And that's a cheap one there. They make these things. You can spend some money on a lead knife if you want to buy an expensive one. And then I found these dikes that are special lead cutters. And I thought, well, this just changed my life here. Now it's really getting easy. And then, not too awful long ago, I found this thing. And, oh man, this is just fantastic. And the reason it's fantastic is because it will cut these steep angles where this lead intersects. Now, I look at people's lead work on Facebook, and wow, some of it, you know, people need a little help. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to show you how to do this and get good results. Anyway, I appreciate it. Let me know questions you have. I'll write them down. We'll talk about them, and we'll keep firing this thing up. All right, take care.